Well, Brian, you're really talented. Why can't you make the next great movie and I'll come in and act like an idiot and I'll make millions off of your skill
first.
Yeah, you got to.
You're missing step one.
Yeah, you're missing step one, John. You got to come up with a catchphrase first. So what's the catchphrase going to be? You have until the end of the episode, listeners. You're listening to this. I'm going to ask John at the end of the episode to get you to listen to the whole episode.
Brian, what do you think of this? What do you think of this?
No. You got to think.
I'm going to throw a lot out. I'm going to throw a lot.
Damn it!
I want to. God damn, smells like dick.
You got to workshop that a bit.
Okay,
more.
all right. Well, that's the first try.
Are we workshopping? Noodle a little bit.
You don't
more.
hit a home run at your first time at bat, okay?
Noodle on that catchphrase a little bit more.
Yeah.
Just throw some in every now and then in this episode and see how it plays.
Oh, goody, goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Brian, John, and Elaine.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Coddington, joined by fellow co-host and filmmaker, John Woolscroft.
I always feel like, Brian, someone's listening to us. We got no privacy.
I don't know why you're going to the show. Why are you going to the show tunes or just music tunes?
Well, I've always felt that I should be on Broadway.
Oh, our filmmaker that we're talking about today is not on Broadway.
Oh,
I don't think so. Are they?
Well, I'm sure they turn all movies into Broadway shows, so I'm sure we'll get Shaun of the Dead, the musical, eventually.
Oh,
coming to get you, Barbara.
That would be amazing. I would pay good money to see a Shaun of the Dead musical.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'm feeling hot fuzz.
That sounds like a condition. You should get it checked out. But what are we talking about today, John?
Well, we this is probably our least episodes version or type of episode we do. Words are fun.
Yeah, words are fun.
But it's
on a podcast
because it's hard to make sure that you're caught up on all these movies. But we are doing a filmmaker retrospective on the one and only Mr. Edgar Wright.
One of my favorite filmmakers, and you'll find out why. But like with most of our episodes, especially one of this weight, he's a film lover's filmmaker, and I felt that we needed to have some help. So continuing our long running partnership with other podcasts, which I've been long running in that we started it like this year.
Long.
I decided to ask. I think I can call her friend of the show now because we were on her show.
Mm-hmm.
But we're joined by.
Right, we ruined her show.
We ruined. I'm sorry. I'm serious. I was listening back to. I'm just like, man, John and I are assholes on her show talking about Batman.
We turned into like giddy, perverse 13-year-olds just talking about our favorite movie for like 3 hours.
To think that you guys are really channeling, the Keaton Batman, giving it that 80s flair that the episode needed. Yeah,
we are. We're joined by Sophia Ricciardi.
Ricciardi.
Did I pronounce it? I pronounced it again.
Yeah, once more with feeling. You got it.
Ricciardi of Moviestruck, as well as a bunch of other podcasts. You told us just a few minutes ago that you have 5, which I can't even manage 1, let alone 5.
Yes, I am a podcast producer by trade. So every time anyone I know tangentially is like, hey, I want to talk online for a living, they call in me and I do my best to make them sound as good as possible.
Can you make me sound better, please?
I do a lot of telling people to adjust their gain.
Don't you feel like a little bit like that sketch from the show, the IT Crowd, where you're like telling the person, "Can you turn it off? Did you unplug it and plug it back in?"
Constantly, and then I experience any. There was some minor technical issues when you guys were on my podcast, and the way that I solved all of those after we recorded was that I completely unplugged everything that I have currently attached to my preamp and plugged it back in and it worked completely fine.
The ultimate solution.
I mean,
age-old advice.
You could have told us that you just threw your computer out the window and we would have been cool with it. Like, it would have been a problem there.
Well, I got to ask you, do you think that I'm meant for this business? Because I was told on my wedding day by my then-to-be father-in-law, he said, John, you got a face for radio and a voice for books. So
I think that just means you get to do more audiobook work. Maybe they'll
yeah.
do some,
There you go. Yeah.
You know, I've been listening, and this, again, we haven't even talked about Edgar Wright yet, but I've been getting into audiobooks personally. This is real talk here. And I got to tell you, John, I think you could narrate Dune, because that's what I'm listening to right now is Dune.
The spice.
You just have to learn how to like really enunciate the word melange.
Yeah,
And
the trick is making desert power not sound ridiculous.
And Quetzat Haderach.
You got to hand to Kyle MacLachlan. He tried his hardest. Yeah.
Well, he's not the one narrating the book, John.
Well, he did in the movie. I mean, you know.
Well, he acted in the movie. He didn't narrate the movie.
Well, no. Virginia Madsen did.
Virginia Madsen did. Doing her best like stoic voice. Anyway, enough about Dune. Honestly, we'll get to Dune Part 2 because the trailer just dropped for it, which looks amazing. But we're going to talk about, again, a film. I really consider Edgar Wright a film lover's filmmaker. In that he has, at least for me, made some of the most visually stunning and also some of the most complex looking films that, you know, aren't completely kind of up their own ass. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I love Christopher Nolan, but some of his stuff, like Tenet, just feel. Yeah, I know.
I
John.
risked my health during the pandemic to go see that. I'm like, I was shaking in the movie theater. I was like, I should have been wearing two masks, but I was just wearing one. I'm sitting in the back of the theater.
Oh, you should have double bagged your mask.
Like thankfully, there was only one person in the theater, like in the front row, and I was in the back row. I don't know why. There's only two people. I don't know why he was in the front row. Whatever. But at least I was far away from somebody, and I'm like, I risked my health for this. Yeah,
I didn't. HBO Max, baby.
But Brian, would you say that Edgar Wright is kind of what, at least what I would call, I want to know if you agree, like a post-Tarantino type of director, like him, Tarantino, Kevin Smith, kind of like they grew up, these movie lovers, and all of their movies are in one way or another kind of a like a romance letter to cinema?
I think that's fair. I've always felt that, like, I love Tarantino. I really do. Even some of his movies that were like, you know, like Hateful Eight. I know everyone likes that one, but it's
they do
kind of, yeah, a lot of people do.
I think that's his weakest, but
that's what I'm saying. It's like I don't really care for it as much as some other people do. But I see Edgar Wright as someone who took a lot of those lessons from Tarantino films, and especially like movies from that early 90s, you know, kind of vibe, you know. So that's really what we're talking about here, you know, and really distilled him into stylized to the nth degree, you know. Even some of his movies that are not, I guess, comedies, because he does inject a lot of comedy into them, which kind of lends itself to that stylized vibe. But even movies like again, like Baby Driver and even The World's End, which is a comedy, but I'd say it's not as over the top in its production design and like color palette, and it feels to me like he's distilled all those elements from Tarantino in those early 90s movies and really stylized them to the nth degree.
That's fair.
Yeah, I feel like what separates him from Tarantino and some other similar kind of film lovers directors for me is that you can really tell when you're watching an Edgar Wright movie how much he thought about every single department on set and not just the story and the particular visual language. Because I'm a huge audio nerd, and the one thing I always appreciate watching his movies is not just how well sound designed they are, but how much you can tell that they had to think about the sound design when they were actually shooting the movie. Baby Driver is probably the best example of it.
Yeah.
I can tell you how many times I would be sitting in film school and a professor would be talking about how the sirens in the chase scene line up with Hocus Pocus perfectly.
I was that guy. I was that film professor. I did that. I'm not kidding. I literally did that. And here's the thing. I had taken that scene without even seeing the movie yet, because I really hadn't seen Baby Driver in completion until recently. And I loved that particular sequence because of the fact that, you know, it is pitch perfect with one, you know, kind of the elements of film pacing, tying that to the sound within the actual story, and then kind of moving it from both, you know, diegetic to non-diegetic. It's just it's a beautiful choreography that I really don't see any other filmmaker try to do.
Yeah, it makes his films very distinct. Like when you're watching an Edgar Wright movie, you are very aware that you are watching an Edgar Wright movie, which is impressive in its own way. That's not obtrusive, because there's a similar energy that I get from Tarantino movies, for example, and sometimes that's not actually to the benefit of the movie. But whenever it's Edgar Wright, for the most part, it seems to work.
And you know, you get that it's few and far between any longer. Like, you know, I was just actually talking about earlier about Gus Van Sant, and how I said to my girlfriend, I'm like, he's a director I admire, I think, even more than like. And there are even directors like I don't like their films at all, but I admire, like Wes Anderson. I don't like anything Wes Anderson has ever put out, but that doesn't mean I don't admire him, because I admire that he has a style, and he's not going to be bought to make the next Marvel movie. He's going to keep making Wes Anderson movies until he's dead. And there's something admirable about that. And yeah, I agree with you that, Edgar Wright, you know, you know what you're getting, even though he does mix it up quite a bit, like when you go into an Edgar Wright movie. And Sophia, I do want to apologize for you for a second ago. I'm so used to being one-on-one with Brian on the show that I realized I only asked him that question. So I'm sorry I left you out on that, but like, that is just force of habit.
Yeah, it's been a while since we have a third. So, but you know, one of the things that I really love, along with just kind of what you were mentioning, Sophia, about his love of sound design, is just his love of post-production.
Yeah,
like I'm an editor by trade. You know, I make my living editing video and doing, you know, visual effects and motion graphics. So like, I love his approach to editing. It's honestly like a ballet with every film that he makes, and how he approaches editing. Because of course, you know, with a lot of his like match cuts, which I think that's one of the things that most people get with an Edgar Wright film, is you're going to have at least 5 match cuts within the whole film. And they're all going to have some meaning behind them, even if you don't even think that it's going to have meaning behind them. They all do. But the fact that you have to plan for that at the script level tells me his approach to post-production is all-encompassing. It is not just a matter of like, I have to edit this thing, you know, and this just makes sense. I'm cutting pieces here and there. It's literally, he's crafting the puzzle pieces that he already knows are going to fit in the puzzle beforehand. And that's something that I really appreciate.
There's a beauty, I think, and it's either a beauty or a curse if somebody is handling a movie from pre-production all the way through post-production. What I mean by that is like, oh, I wrote it, I'm directing it, I'm either editing it myself or overseeing editing, or I may be in it as well. That either can make a movie or it can break a movie. You know, you can have an Edgar Wright or you can have a Neil Breen, you know.
You'll find any chance to put Neil Breen in the damn episode, aren't you? Son of a bitch.
The corporations. Pharmaceuticals.
Yeah. Sophia, are you familiar with Neil Breen's work? Have you watched any of his stuff?
I'm tangentially familiar. I wouldn't say it's a frequent stopping off point for me.
just keep it that way, because once you go down the Neil Breen like suck hole, it's really bad.
Don't mention Neil Breen's suck hole.
All of it is his entire filmography is the suck hole. Okay. Getting back to Edgar Wright, though,
Shall
what is
I
a
give us some
suckle?
background? Shall I give us some background? on
Yes,
this
please
director?
give us some
Sure.
background. Give us a palate cleanser from the Neil Breen shit.
Yes, well, English filmmaker Edgar Wright was born 18th of April 1974 in Polish Dorset and grew up predominantly in Wales. Throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, he directed many short films, first on a Super 8 camera, which was given from a family member, and later on a Video 8 camcorder. This won him a competition in the television program Going Live. From 1992 to 1994, Wright attended I'm Not Even Going to Try College of Art and Design and received an ND in audio visual
I'm
design.
not even gonna try.
But it looks like boner mouth. I'm not gonna lie. It's probably Bonnermouth. I don't know. In June 2018, Arts University, Not Even Going to Try, awarded Wright an honorary fellowship. On receiving the award, Wright said that he still is very fond of them to this time. He began making independent short films before making his first feature film, A Fistful of Fingers, in 1995. Wright continued to direct the comedy series Asylum in 1996 with writer David Williams. After directing several other television shows, Wright directed the sitcom Spaced, which aired for 2 series starring frequent collaborators Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, which I think gets us to his fame.
His fame, Shaun of the Dead.
Well, I mean, Brian, have you ever seen Spaced?
I never saw Space. No,
Sophia, have you?
I have not. No.
Okay, I'm a dork. I've seen the whole show. But here's the great thing about English television: they only do things for like 2 or 3 seasons.
it's true.
Mhm.
So it's not like
Well,
how
they call
long
them,
did MASH run?
They call them series. They're series.
Yeah.
I watch Doctor Who, so I know it's a
I'm
series.
big British murder mystery fans.
Oh,
Used to the high turnover of actors, love seeing them pop up in something completely unrelated the same year as they left a show, etc.
So isn't that the big one, like Pirot or something like that? Is that the big one?
That's one of them. Midsummer Murders is also a pretty popular long-running one. I'll go down for Death in Paradise any day, though. That's by far the best. The cast is so charming, and the guy who was the kid who goes to America in Love Actually is one of the detectives on it in a later season. So get to see him show up again.
Oh, that little gremlin kid that learned the drums.
Oh no! The one who went to America to get his
Colin.
Olympics. Yes.
And he's got a big knob.
The only one that I had seen, the British murder mysteries, well, not really mysteries, or crime dramas, is Broadchurch. Did you watch Broadchurch? And that's again because Doctor Who's in it.
There's only one Doctor Who, right, Brian? Ever?
Shut up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the nice thing again about English television, it's not Gunsmoke, it's not The Simpsons, it's not Grey's Anatomy. There isn't like 17 seasons. So I think it only went for 2 seasons, like most English shows. And I kind of did that old binging thing many moons ago and watched it. And for me, it's Clerks in an apartment complex. So instead of them being employees, it's just kind of like movie and pop culture loving nerds of different varieties, all living in an apartment building together. So it's kind of like,
So is it Big Bang Theory?
Well, I mean, it's actually funny though, Brian.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I hate Big Bang Theory with a passion. And
yeah, that show sucks. Yeah, but so yeah, it's kind of like Seinfeld meets Clerks, and very funny, and it's like it's obviously the template for all of the Edgar Wright comedies that followed.
Interesting.
And obviously that's where the whole Nick Frost and Simon Pegg thing started. By the way, I want to be Nick. I want to be a guy like Nick Frost, like, or Jason Mewes for Kevin Smith. These are just guys who were outrageous, like jerks that were funny that they hung around with, and they went, "Hey, I'm really talented. I'm going to be famous someday." And he went, "Snoochie Boochie." And he's like, "Do you want to be in my movie?" And he was, "Snoochie Boochie." You know, and then they're millionaires now because their friends put them in movies.
Are you saying, John, that you have to come up with some sort of catchphrase like Snoochie Boochie?
Well, Brian, you're really talented. Why can't you make the next great movie? And I'll come in and act like an idiot, and I'll make millions off of your skill.
First.
Yeah, you got to.
Like
Yeah, you got to.
step one.
Yeah, you're missing step one, John. You got to come up with a catchphrase first. So what's the catchphrase going to be? You have until the end of the episode, listeners. You're listening to this. I'm going to ask John, at the end of the episode to get you to listen to the whole episode.
Brian, what do you think of this? What do you think of this?
No. You got to think.
I'm going to throw a lot out. I'm going to throw a lot
damn
out.
it.
I want to. God damn, smells like dick.
You got to workshop that a bit.
Okay,
more.
all right. Well, that's the first try.
Are we workshopping? Noodle a little bit.
You don't
more.
hit a home run at your first time at bat. Okay.
Noodle on that catchphrase a little bit more.
Yeah.
Just throw some in every now and then in this episode and see how it plays.
Yeah, and then what I'll do is like I'll ask the Discord channel or I'll ask on Twitter which one of John's potential make $1 million catchphrases do you like? That's audience engagement, right? Like that's audience engagement.
Yeah. People love to feedback on things.
You go.
Ask a question in your posts.
That's right. So of course, after Spaced, he got into what I think is one of his absolute best, and I think it's one of the purest examples of combining horror and comedy into one thing, and that is, of course, Shaun of the Dead.
And may I make the theory that and this is a lot to bring up right at the moment, but that like a lot of filmmakers like Kevin Smith and Robert Townsend, did he peak at his first movie? It happens a lot in a lot of people's careers. Even a guy as famous as a filmmaker as Orson Welles peaked at his first movie.
Nope.
I don't think he's ever made a movie as good as Shaun of the Dead.
I disagree.
Yeah. As much as I love Shaun of the Dead, I think he peaked early, but I don't think that he peaked at the number film numero uno. Words are hard. It's fine. We talk for a living.
Words are hard.
Yeah.
No, I don't think he peaked at that. I think honestly it was a very early foray into combining what had obviously worked well in Spaced and transition it to film. You know, because obviously he had done the Fistful of Fingers. Is that was the one that he did his first film? Yeah. So,
I mean, it's kind of like how Quentin Tarantino's first movie was My Best Friend's Birthday.
Yeah,
or something
it's like the film that no one saw.
Yeah.
And like how, you know, Sam Raimi did Within the Woods, and no one saw that either, except it's on YouTube, by the way. If you want to see an early version of Evil Dead, that's terrible looking. Watch that. But my point is, like, I see that as kind of like transition point. Now, I don't think he peaked, but I think he got pretty damn near close. Because, you know, really films after that, you know, Hot Fuzz, Scott Pilgrim, World's End, I would argue, and we haven't gotten to it yet, but I would argue that Baby Driver is probably his peak. But we're gonna have a fight.
Here's my thing. Like, we don't just do filmmaker retrospectives on filmmakers we love. We do them on notable directors. Like, I'm sure we would love to do one on Alfred Hitchcock, but the man directed 7,000 fucking movies, and that would be a 9-parter.
And he was kind of a creepy bastard.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we could talk about that. But
towards women.
After his Coronado trilogy, am I saying it? Coronado, right?
It was Coronado.
Yeah. After that trilogy, I think the guy is actually kind of an overrated hack.
Oh, shit, really?
Yeah, I'm laying that down. And I'm sorry, but Baby Driver is just a bunch of male, like, toxic fantasy about some woman who's just waiting for your dick.
I don't see it that way.
She waited for him to get out of prison, even though he really never offered her to anything in the movie. She's not a character. She's a trophy. And I said that, I will defend that, because I said that right after I saw the movie.
Well,
the female character in that movie is nothing but a trophy. And I think that it is just people who are virgins for too long writing women in movies that they think, oh, I want them to, these are the trophies I always wanted. So I'm going to write characters that will fulfill my fantasies. That some beautiful woman is just going to wait for me and wait for my penis because, well, I'm the guy they always should have been. I'm the nice guy.
I do think that she suffered a little bit from it. It felt like he had the song in mind to take her name from, and I am blanking on the Baby Driver soundtrack, so I'm just going to Google that really quick.
There's a lot of songs in that soundtrack. Deborah was her name.
Deborah, yeah, which is the Beck song, I think.
Yes.
And it did feel like he heard the song Deborah and then said, oh, I can make a character out of this, and then stuck her in that movie, which is sometimes what works in Baby Driver and sometimes what maybe doesn't, is sort of the jukebox soundtrack, but is a good point in favor of Edgar Wright's movies getting turned into stage shows because they've already got the jukebox soundtrack built in.
Now, here's the thing, and this again, I didn't know we were going to get into this fight already, John.
Yeah, we usually go in order in these movies. We just jumped the Baby Driver.
Well, you just jumped right to Baby Driver. Now, here's why I say that it is his peak. Now, I will say that basically, I think every one of his films really doesn't know how to write female characters at all. Like I don't see any of them. Last Night in Soho, which is predominantly female. I mean, I don't think he knows how to write female characters.
I'm going to be a politician here real quick.
Okay.
I don't think that men know how to write women, and I think women don't really know how to write men. And that's why anytime that I write a script that has women in it, I hand it off to a female writer that I trust to be like, am I writing women honestly, or am I just completely ignorant to how to write women? And if they say like, yeah, dude, this is like latent unconscious misogyny, I'm like, like, can you help me rewrite it? I volunteer to have them rewrite the females in the script to make them more human. I don't do it purposely, but it happens because you have a perspective of being, unless you don't gender identify, male or female,
Yeah, I think that's a great strategy for it. But I'm glad you brought up Last Night in Soho because I watched that fairly recently for this podcast. It's the only Edgar Wright movie I hadn't seen in the last couple of years, and watching that as a woman, it did feel very much like someone who doesn't have any experience with the type of story they were trying to tell, kind of clumsily putting it out there. And there were all these instances of, okay, I'm a woman, I have this, it's scary to be alone in a new neighborhood kind of feeling for these men can be scary sometimes reasons, or you don't know what's going to happen out in the world. And it felt very much like a caricature of secondhand stories that he had heard in that movie through this character, which is a problem that sometimes you get with male writers telling female-focused stories. And so that's definitely not his peak for me, for a lot of reasons. But it is something that I think he struggles with throughout his movies, and with the shift towards the very female-focused Last Night in Soho, I think you can see it most clearly. But even looking back at like Scott Pilgrim as an adaptation, so some of the problems with its female characters come from its source material, but even so, all of them are pretty one note or idealized in a way that doesn't feel like a full person. It just feels like a character with a capital C.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a naive, like 20-some-year-old dickhead who treats women like crap.
I really like Scott Pilgrim. Okay,
I'm actually kind of excited, but also kind of sad when we get to that movie.
Yeah. But just to kind of finish my thought about Baby Driver and why I think it is peak. Okay, I'm looking at this not necessarily from the way that he can't write women, because he can't, but from his skills as a filmmaker. When it comes to his master of color, master of the edit, master of storytelling, master of choreography, like that is all distilled down. All of the lessons that he learned from Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, Scott Pilgrim, The World's End, it all distills down into that movie. And it's again, as I said, like barring that issue, it really is a beautiful film in how it's constructed. And I don't think anyone can say it isn't. So that's what I mean when I say it's at peak. His peak is his peak skills as a filmmaker.
Well, see, that's what bothers me a little bit when we talk about filmmakers, because like that makes me think of somebody like Zack Snyder, and that you can't tell me that like a movie like Sucker Punch and 300 are not achievements.
God damn it! You pull a Sucker Punch.
Wait. Are not achievements in digital post-production editing. Like, sure, yes,
they're two different filmmakers, though, man. Like, they're two different things.
But that doesn't mean that the movies aren't vile pieces of crap. And I'm not saying that Baby Driver is that. I'm doing apples to pomegranates, but I'm saying I won't get distracted, even as a filmmaker, by quality talent in the filmmaking process if I have a problem with the story and the direction that the director is trying to tell that story from.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah. I think that gets at the problem with
disagree, but okay.
Yeah, I think that gets to the problem with trying to talk about the director in isolation, because there are so many different departments and department heads that get to put their creative spin on a movie. I feel like with Edgar Wright, you can kind of get away with it a little, because it does feel like he has such a clear control from script to post. But yeah, that's a common grievance I get over on Moviestruck, where I'm like, I don't know if we can blame this on the director or if we can give the director credit for, or all the credit for, a good sound choice or a good cinematography choice, if that's the only really notable thing about a movie. But in the case of Baby Driver, it is all of the blocking and cinematography and audio and all of those technical aspects really working well.
I will give that to him.
Yeah, I can't take that away from him.
The man's a technical wizard.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And again, and maybe it's because of the fact that, again, I come at film from a post-production angle. I come from it from the editor's mind.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when I see what he does with his films and how he really like elevates the art of really constructing complexity within the tools of a filmmaker, I got to be blown away by it. Now,
he's just a Sam Raimi fuck
Shut
boy.
up. Shut up.
Sam Raimi fuck boy. Hey, there's one of my catchphrases. Sam Raimi fuck boy.
Oh, okay. Okay. What was the first one again? Because I'm gonna have to write these down. Do you remember the first one?
I don't remember, but I've written down, since we started, about 7 of them.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna ask you at the end which one they are. And again, I'm serious to our listeners. Let us know which one of John's catchphrases will be the one that gets him $1 million.
In your movie, Brad, you got to write it.
Okay. Well, you have
to write the next Citizen Kane.
I'm not, dude. I write horror movies. I don't write the next Citizen Kane. So like that's not happening.
But I'll play Kate instead of saying Rosebud. I'll say snoochie boochies or some variation of it.
Oh my God!
I'll become famous. Riding your coattails.
Okay, I'll get right on that, John. Now I do want to mention Shaun of the Dead. I know we kind of glazed over that one because I do think it's important. So,
yes.
When did you all first discover Shaun of the Dead? Because I can tell you when I discovered it. I discovered it on the cover of Rue Morgue magazine in 2004. What about you both?
Sophia, do you want to go first?
Sure. I watched it at some point in high school at a friend's house at like 2 a.m. Couldn't tell you exactly when, but this would have been in the 20-teens at some point. So far enough after it came out that it wasn't recent. And I remember loving it right off the bat. I think it's an incredible combination of horror and comedy that doesn't really undercut either for the sake of a laugh or for the sake of a scream. It kind of lets both have their moment, and that's a really hard balance to strike. So I remember being really impressed by how it accomplished both. And this is before I had any sort of language for who Edgar Wright is as a director or how to watch a movie and dissect it. You know, I hadn't been consciously watching movies for a while at this point in my life. I think the film I'd seen the most was that Dark Shadows remake that Johnny Depp was in.
So
and
sorry.
I had a friend who loved it. So every time we'd sleep over at her house from like middle school through high school, she's like, let's watch Dark Shadows. And you just hear like 4 teenage girls groan in disgust in the background. And still we watched it every time. But that's not what this is about. Shaun of the Dead was so much of a relief.
You're going in the corner just being like, I hate all of you for making me watch this crap.
Well,
I saw it in the theater.
Yeah, me too. That makes me go off on a side tangent. Oh my God. There used to be the big movie theater in town was replaced by a Cinemark Tinseltown, you know, like one of the giant, horrendously ugly movie complexes. And so the old big movie theater in town became what they called the dollar theater. So it was like after all the movies had left, like, you know, the main theater, if you hadn't seen them yet, like 7 weeks later, you can go and pay like $1 to go see them before they're completely gone from their theatrical run. And Dark Shadows is one of the movies that I went to see with my then wife, and my mom did not realize this, was drunk. And I mean, there's only like 9 other people in the theater, but she is just talking through the whole fucking movie, and my shushes and my anxiety ridden body was not any clues to her to stop talking. And that was on top of the movie being terrible,
Yeah,
it was one of the worst.
Anything.
This is one of the worst cinematic experiences in my life because my mom was like, "These are all songs that I grew up with. They're crazy." I'm like, "Mom, we're in a fucking movie theater."
I have never met a
Stop.
single person who has had a good cinematic or home viewing experience because Dark Shadows was very bad, but then also just no one has ever had a good time with the experience of watching it. I'm convinced that person does not exist.
You know what it is? Watching Dark Shadows is the equivalency of eating a pizza that's been sitting under a heat lamp for 8 hours. You look at it, the cover looks nice. It's got glistening like pepperoni on it. But the minute you take a fucking bite of that thing, oh man, get ready for the shitsville because you're going to be on the toilet for at least an hour.
Right.
After.
CC's Pizza 20 minutes before they close. The macaroni and cheese pizza. It's been sitting there for 8 hours.
8 hours. That's what Dark Shadows is. Because like the cover and like the trailer for it didn't inherently give away how terrible this fucking thing was.
It looked passable.
You know who did give it away was Helena Bonham Carter. They're like, "Did you watch the show before to prepare? Or were you a fan of the show?" And she went, "There's a show."
Oh.
And I was like, "Oh my God, Helen, come on! You know that there's a fan base here, and you just pooped in their face." But for me,
for you, John,
yeah, I mean,
back around.
for there being a Tinseltown Cinemark in my hometown that had a lot of screens, I don't know, and I could be very wrong, and I might ask to check the record books of my said Tinseltown and Erie. I don't think they got this movie when it came out, and it went completely under my radar, completely.
Yeah.
And I went out to eat at this crappy restaurant right out on the outskirts of my hometown because you have to go to the outskirts of your hometown to get like a B- meal instead of a D- meal. And I was sitting there with my sister and her then boyfriend, and they went, "Did you see Shaun of the Dead?" And I went, "What the hell is?" I said, "Do you mean Dawn of the Dead?" And they went, No, Shaun of the Dead. It's like a parody or like a comedy of zombie movies, like an homage to George Romero. And I was like, "How dare anyone touch my Lord and Savior, Mr. Romero?" And they were like, no, it's really funny. You got to check it out. I'm like, well, whatever. But next time I was at the Blockbuster, because I'm old. Yes, I have lots of grays in my hair and my balls are hanging lower than I would like. I'm old now.
I don't think our audience wants to know about your hair.
It's just a part of life.
Oh, okay.
Deal with it. Are you there, God? It's me, John. But I went to the Blockbuster. I'm like, "Hey, ain't that Shaun of the Dead movie my sister recommended?" I'm like, "Well, I'll give it a whirl." And then by the end of the movie, I was like, "Oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever." And yeah, from then I was kind of like, anytime I saw from director Edgar Wright and trailers, I was like, "Oh, wait, shut up. I got to hear this."
Yeah, I rented this at the Hollywood Video. And because same thing as you, John, like they didn't screen this one in my theater in where I lived. So like I saw it on Rue Morgue magazine. Like I literally, like to this day, I still remember reading it in like the university like study lounge area. And I was like, "Man, okay, this looks cool." I didn't have that visceral reaction to them making a movie, making fun of George Romero like you did. But I was like, "Oh, look at the makeup effects on these. These look pretty badass." And sure enough, it was when it came to Hollywood Video that I saw it. And then I bought it immediately after because I was like, "This is amazing." Because I've really never seen a movie hit the horror and comedy at the same time, and do it really well. Because one comedy is extremely difficult to do right because everyone has their own sense of humor on things. And I think, John, we've said this before on the show, like that's probably like the hardest one.
Oh yeah,
to get right. But then on top of that, horror is also subjective, right? Like I'll see a trailer for and I don't care if I'm going to trash them, a Blumhouse film, and I'll hate it. but then someone else will watch the same trailer and they'll be like, "Oh man, that's fucking scary." Like, have you seen the one for the Boogeyman? The new one?
Probably, but I don't remember.
That's my point.
Yeah.
But it's the same sort of thing. Like, it's subjective, but I really feel like Shaun of the Dead is able to marry these two together in a smart, witty way that pays homage to those movies that we love, but at the same time, like, injects a very awesome British sardonic humor that I don't think you can get anywhere else.
Well, you know what this film reminds me of, guys? Like, I would say even more blatant of a comedy than it was. And I'm not just saying this because of all the references that he uses from a cinematography standpoint in the film, but it reminds me of Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness a little bit. It's the horrific.
Oh,
you know, I mean, the movie is not a horror movie. It is, but the movie's also hilarious, which is what Sam Raimi is really absolutely known for. So this reminded me, I'm like, oh, this is like a new generation's Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not the scariest movie you're ever going to see, and it's not the funniest movie you're ever going to see, but it strikes like the exact perfect balance of the two to manage to somehow still be in both categories.
I also think that the character arc of Shaun is what separates it.
Oh,
right?
It's very well written. Yeah. By script standards, it hits every point that it should of what a quality screenplay of that ilk should be. Yeah. It hits every nuance in that sense.
Yeah.
But one thing that I do love about this movie is, and to reference another movie, Pineapple Express.
Oh, okay.
Is that, and the reason I'm mentioning this movie is the one part that I absolutely adore about Pineapple Express, and I laughed my ass off watching this movie, is after all this crazy stuff went down, they all dirty, bloody, they should be in the hospital, they all go to a diner and just reminisce about the crazy day they had, the crazy shit they went through the night before, and they're eating food, and like a diner doesn't care what you look like or what you smell like. They're going to serve you. And I'm like, this is so human. This is like, I feel like this is my buddies. I'm not like fighting off like a drug dealer, but if we had a crazy night at a party, we would go the next day and be like, yeah, that was so insane. That was so crazy. And what gets me about this movie is, you see a movie like Night of the Living Dead or Dawn of the Dead or any of these movies, like this movie was like, this is how like real people and people like me, because I was around that age where I'm like, I'm a goof. I drink too much beer. I don't take things too seriously. Like, this is what would happen if these people were in this world. I'm like, this is, zombie movies are always so serious, but what about like the slacker goofballs? Like, what happens to them during the zombie apocalypse? And I'm like, and that's what made it so approachable to me.
Best part of the movie for me is when David gets eaten. I hate that character so much, and that's a testament to the writing. If I'm getting an emotional reaction of hatred, good job, filmmaker and writing staff, because you've made me care enough about the character to wish them doom.
Yes, especially if you are going to have them get eaten or killed off or anything like that.
Yeah. My favorite joke in this movie, and it is not one that anybody remembers, but it is so human, is when Nick Frost and Simon Pegg are trying to psych each other up, and they're like, yeah, you ready? And then Simon Pegg goes, hold on, I gotta wee. It's so human. Yeah, you don't see that movies, but yeah, you gotta take a piss from time to time.
It's so remarkably grounded for being a movie that also has, the zombie apocalypse happening throughout it, the whole thing. It's like, okay, we're at the pub and everyone's digging around for some peanuts or other, bar snacks, and zombies break through the window. It's fine. Yeah, there's some chairs against the door. Yeah,
it's like that show 24. It's like Keith Sutherland doesn't take a dump in an entire day. I don't buy it.
I mean, it's somewhere in there, between the digital clock. Now, of course, after Shaun of the Dead, he followed it up with Hot Fuzz, which kind kind of continues his parody of genre films. This time, the action movie. What are your thoughts on Hot Fuzz?
Sophia, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, right. I'm ready.
I'm ready.
I feel like we're about to talk over each other, but maybe I can sneak in a Sophia.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
This is one of the problems
It's
with
the
not
audio.
having video. This is one of the problems with not having damn video.
It's the audio version of like trying to go through a doorway at the same time as someone who's walking in the other way, and you both kind of juke to the left and the right, and both of you go in the same direction at the same time. And you just do that for a couple minutes. I really like Hot Fuzz. It's the one of the not Cornetto, the Cornetto.
Yeah.
Cornetto, yeah.
It's Cornetto.
Cornetto.
Tomato.
Tomato.
Yeah.
I've got enough flack from UK listeners for mispronouncing British things in the past that I like to check myself mid-episode. This is
You mean your listeners respond to you? Wow.
Only when I'm wrong.
Oh,
Brian, don't be passive aggressive to listeners. They're less likely to respond even then.
no, that's true. But they got to listen to the end of the episode
Yeah, for the
Yeah.
to
catchphrase.
find out which the catchphrase is going to be.
Hot Fuzz is the one of the Cornetto trilogy that I usually recommend to people who have seen none of them, because I think it's the most like wide audience approachable of the three, even though my personal favorite would probably be Shaun of the Dead. I maybe one of the best examples of setup and payoff in all of movie making. I did Hot Fuzz on Moviestruck, and what we do on that show is we go through the whole plot of the movie in question, and trying to pick what single shots that appeared in that train montage that I didn't have to mention because they would come up later on in the movie and pay off in some way was an impossible task. That whole first half of that film is, here's little things we're going to plant that will pay off in the second half. And I think it does the twist ending better than some of Edgar Wright's later movies, notably Last Night in Soho. Yeah, but overall, I really like it. I don't think it's my personal favorite of the Cornetto trilogy, only because of how much I like the genre that Shaun of the Dead is operating in. But it's extremely competent, and I can't take anything away from it, really. I'd still be happy to watch it any night.
Well, when I first saw this movie, I would say, and it's kind of funny to say this about a movie like Hot Fuzz, like it's much more subtle in its comedy than Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
And I think that like I thought to myself, and like, you shouldn't stereotype a director who's made one damn movie, but I'm like, this guy makes really goofy, funny zombie movies. And it's like, oh, his next movie looks like Bad Boys, but it's a satire. And I'm like, well, I don't know about all this. And I think it took me till the second viewing and then really the third viewing where I was like, Hot Fuzz is a masterpiece. I love this movie. Because at first I was like, this isn't over the top, like predictably silly. This isn't have zombies. Like, so in the fact that like
it's
there's
definitely a more subtle film.
And the fact that there's a legitimate mystery in the movie too. It's not just like, it's not like a Mel Brooks movie where everything is just over the top and obvious from the outset because he wants to break the fourth wall and be as goofy as possible. Like, while this movie is silly, it's not goofy, and it does follow that kind of Point Break, Bad Boys kind of cop plot, but riddled with that dry English humor in there.
I know for me, like I think this one and World's End are kind of like, they're okay. And maybe that's because of the fact that I really, really loved Shaun of the Dead. And really loved that humor. And I'm not gonna lie, I was a little disappointed that we never got a sequel to Shaun of the Dead. Although I believe that there is a comic book series that kind of picks up after the movie, but I wanted a movie, not a comic book.
Day of the Shaun.
Yeah, something like that. But for me, like the best scene is when Timothy Dalton gets it in the end. And what does he say? Like, does anyone have a glass of water or ice?
He's like the Penguin. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a cool
And
glass
he's
of
like,
ice
he's
water.
impaled through the throat and into his mouth. And that's like that right there, like distills down the whole movie to me. It's like over the top parody of action films. I will say I don't think that the character arc in this is as strong as in Shaun of the Dead.
No. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
I think it's a little bit more on the nose. Like you pretty much know what lesson he's going to learn and how it's going to change him by the end of the movie when you meet this, you know, very straight-laced Nicholas Angel, which is a great name for it. I love that. It's the exact right name for this type of character in this Bad Boys-esque world.
Don't you mean Nicholas Angel? Or Angle? I'm sorry, Angle. I just blew the joke. Nicholas Angle. Brian, edit that.
I'm not editing that. I'm staying in.
All right.
No, it's like why don't you just name him Derek Explosion?
Oh my god, yeah.
Well, immediately it makes me think of Face Off. Castor Troy.
Oh my god.
And what is John
Pollux Troy?
No, that's Nick Cage's character. Pollux Troy.
No, Castor was Nick Cage's character, and Pollux was the brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Castor and Pollux get it.
But Travolta's name is even as ridiculous. But yeah, Archer. Balls. Anyways,
everyone just called him Archer, so like that.
Yeah.
But that was his last name.
But still, Archer. Let alone, yeah. But yeah, I think it comes down a lot to like what genres do you like, and I find merit in most genres. There's something good in any genre. There's a lot of bad in any genre, but there's some good in any genre. So I'm not dismissive of anything, but like obviously I love horror movies and zombie movies a lot more than I like cop movies and like action packed cop movies. So like I think that I have an unfair bias towards Shaun of the Dead because like that's my bread and butter as compared to Hot Fuzz, and it's like picking a documentary on like one of the like streaming services that just do documentaries. Like I'm sure they're all well done documentaries, but I'm gonna pick one that like, ooh, that's my bag. That's my interest. I want to watch that one. It doesn't mean that it's better than any of the other ones. It just means that's what I'm interested in.
I do think Hot Fuzz has one of my it's like the most film nerd porn shot of all time when he opens up the giant case of DVDs and there's a glowing light from within and it's just wall to wall shelves and shelves, like Blockbuster on steroids. Just DVD cabinet. That is something that someday I will have in a house. I don't know how and where. Someday the Hot Fuzz DVD cabinet is becoming a reality.
I want something like a library, like you have like you have got the nice little study with a lot of wood and everything. It's like instead of books, there's just movies.
Yeah,
of all types.
I do appreciate the meta nature of this movie. Like you don't see that in Shaun of the Dead. They don't go, this is just like Night of the Living Dead or this is like Dawn of the Dead. But this movie, literally Nick Frost is like, no, we should watch all these movies that we're actually lampooning in this movie.
Now, Sophia, I would tell you, don't give up on your dreams of having that Hot Fuzz DVD wall, because John very much has that now. The old house he used to live in, he quite literally had a room that was nothing but floor to ceiling DVDs and VHS.
And I called the room, I swear I'm not a virgin room.
Well, it was funny because we recorded in that room one time, and I'm just like, John, we can't do this. Like
the room was too small.
It's too small because it's like the scene from Toys when the room is closing in. That's literally what it was. And DVDs.
I wired the room.
He did
that, like, so it was perfect. And we all just went, yeah, let's never do this again.
I can't imagine that walls and walls of plastic cases were making for great sound quality.
Well, not even that. It was just too damn small.
It was just too damn small. Like it's like that scene from Toys. So he follows up Hot Fuzz with a movie that I geek out over, and I still geek out over.
Brian, I'm gonna cut you off. I just want to quickly mention, because I feel you're jumping over it. It's Grindhouse and the fake trailers.
Shit, yeah.
And I think probably the most honest of the Grindhouse fake trailers is his don't.
I love that trailer.
Because it feels like it's real.
So have you ever seen the trailer for Don't?
I have not seen the trailer for Don't.
Oh my god, you have to see it. I'm gonna after the show I'm gonna send it to you, because so you're familiar with the Grindhouse concept? You're familiar with what that was? So it's a shame that this didn't work. But like I know John and I, we hadn't known each other, but I think we went to screenings of that Grindhouse series, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went that opening weekend. It was
I did too.
The Erie Horror Fest held a big thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But that was one of the big draws, is that, you know, the filmmakers like Rob Zombie, Edgar Wright, I'm blanking on the other guy's name, did Cabin Fever.
Yeah, he was the Bear Jew.
Yeah.
Eli Roth.
Yeah, Eli Roth. There you go.
Ah.
It's almost 11 o'clock at night here, so that's words are hard, people.
Yes.
But yeah, all these individual little trailers for movies that didn't exist, and they're glorious. And honestly, with the exception of Thanksgiving, this one's the best one.
I enjoy Thanksgiving more, but I think this one's more accurate.
Yes, this is a trailer for a 1970s, early 80s British Gothic horror. Like,
oh really?
11.
I think it's late 60s, early 70s.
Oh no, this is totally like making fun of Hammer films. Like, and we're talking, but here's the thing: I'm not talking good Hammer films, because the 60s was good Hammer films. I'm talking we're on
getting in the weeds now.
No, but I'm talking like the studio's going bankrupt and we have to sell it with more over the top gore and nudity, and that's what we're getting. But we still have access to all of these like old fashioned Gothic castles because we film in England. So like that's what this movie is, and it's just nothing but these people go to this Gothic castle. It's in the 70s or early 80s. They encounter all of these like horrible monsters and shit. Eyeballs are coming off. You know, there's Nick Frost, who's dressed like a baby in a diaper, who lives under the stairs, who's clapping his hands holding the doll. And it's just about don't go into the house, and it's just repeating itself. Don't. It's a glorious trailer.
If you think of entering the house, don't. If you think of going in, don't.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that one up, because I almost forgot it.
But yeah, this is where I thought this guy was actually going to be my favorite director of all time, because I'm like, wait, he did Shaun of the Dead, he did Hot Fuzz, he did this trailer for Don't, and then he made Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yes.
Yeah, and I actually when I met John in grad school, I was hit by the Scott Pilgrim bug. So things.
This is where I thought I was going to lose friends.
Yeah. So one of the stories is like, I remember I was sitting in class and I was like, guys, I just saw this new movie. It's called Scott Pilgrim versus the World. It's got amazing visual effects over the top. And like, everyone's like, oh, that's cool. And I don't think any of you had seen it. And then as soon as it came out on DVD, like we went into one of like the student lounges, and I'm just like, we're gonna put this on, we're gonna watch it. And I remember after we had watched it, you and Blake were just like, yeah, this isn't good, man.
Well, but yeah, because I it seemed like everybody except possibly Blake like loved this movie. And is there anything worse on this planet than when all of your friends, especially ones that you consider like experts in film, and I'm a master's program in film.
I appreciate that you put me into that category.
You are an expert in film, and like it's not just like my cousin Teddy, you know, who's an idiot. By the way, I don't have a cousin Teddy, but you know what I'm saying, like, look, you should watch this movie, and you're like, yeah, whatever, you know, like. But people who are experts on movies, like, you should watch this movie, you're gonna love it, and everybody around you loves it, and then you go see it, and you're like, I don't like this movie at all, and I feel like everyone's gonna be mad at me if I tell them.
Well, Blake was the one who kind of broke the ice there, because that's the kind of guy Blake is, and he was just like, yeah, man, this ain't good. And then suddenly it was you, Lane, and Ryan going like, yeah, no, it wasn't good, man. Like, it's just not good. And I'm going like, oh, okay.
Well, I mean, we're kind of on the outskirts, you know, and I'll be interested to see what you think, our dear guest. But like, I think that most people absolutely adore this movie. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I'd say so. This was a pretty touchstone-y movie for my admittedly very geeky group of college friends. Like this was a big common ground for a lot of us. It's like, oh, you like Scott Pilgrim? I like Scott Pilgrim a lot. You like Scott Pilgrim the movie? Yeah, I love Scott Pilgrim the movie. And I enjoy it a lot. I think it is, the characters of Scott Pilgrim are not my favorite to have ever existed. But I really love the style of this movie, and I think it's still like a pretty fun ride to watch, even if Scott himself kind of drives me a little crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like in terms of putting video game flair into a movie, I can't think of anything that does it better really than Scott Pilgrim. Just with the over the
Super
top
Mario Brothers 1993.
Okay, you know what? You've got me there.
Yeah. Sorry, honey. No, I'm just kidding. Go on.
No, it's as an Italian American, it's shameful for me to have even forgotten for a moment about the existence of that movie. But like the visual effects in this, while in no way are trying to be realistic, are incredibly cool, and the post-production, the editing style, all contributing to how quick and somehow like comic booky and video gamey at the same time it manages to look. It's just like the perfect style to make this otherwise kind of problematic's not the right word, and dragging is also not the right word, but there's something about the story just never quite clicked for me. And I feel like the style really saves this movie in terms of my enjoyment of watching it, to push through that and have a good time with it.
Yeah, I know. Brian, let me jump in before, because I feel like as a fan of this movie, you're going to have a lot more to say than me.
I will.
So, I do feel the movie is about an obnoxious incel dork who rewrites his history of him being a hero, even though he's kind of a piece of crap. And I found the movie just to be almost like just too much like cotton candy, like all the visual gags and the routines and all the bright lights and colors and special effects. And it was almost like, yeah, maybe as an adult, I might like one tiny little whisk of cotton candy and go, that reminds me of being a kid. But this movie felt like I ate 17 pounds of cotton candy, and I felt sick and I felt gross when it was done, and I couldn't relate to any of the characters in this movie. And as much as I love comic books and video games, I don't need to be pandered to in a movie of like, look, don't these look like comic books and video games? Don't you love this? Aren't you just an incel loser like the main character? So that was I could barely get through the movie. I hate this movie. I won't say this about anything else this man has done, but I hate this movie.
Tell me how you really feel, John.
I think you did.
How do you really feel? So okay, to retort that, I don't hate this movie. I actually really like it. Now, as I've gotten older, I do see the problems with the characters. I think part of that is the source material. Sophia, you brought this up early in the episode that this wasn't written from scratch by Edgar Wright. This was written in comic book form, and there's some things in comic book form that work better, and this was a popular comic book series, so you got to take that with a grain of salt. Okay, so on top of that, I'm a VFX person, so seeing a very fluid use of VFX in a very stylized way that makes sense for the movie, I love. And like, I love the title credits to this thing. Like when I teach motion graphics, first day, I always show the opening title credits to Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. It is my go-to. And it's because it does what Edgar Wright does in almost every one of his movies. He puts meaning on certain visuals, certain characters, and how they dress, what colors surround them. It's all right there. Everything has like a color palette and a costume and a meaning behind it, and it's clearly shown in those first credits. So for me, I love that sort of thing, and that's what jazzed me up when I met you guys, John, and was showing you, I was like, look how awesome this is. But there's problems there, right? It's not a perfect movie. And I can absolutely see your point in saying that, Scott Pilgrim is an incel asshole who rewrites his own history. And the character of Ramona Flowers is the equivalency of the manic pixie dream girl. That is 100% it. But I also go with like, what did you think you were getting with a movie called Scott Pilgrim versus the World? And what did you think you were getting when you see the trailer for this thing? And it's quite literally a comic book / video game come to life. Now, why I also like this movie is that this, I think, really is the first time that Edgar Wright really went with choreographing things for the purposes of the movie. Because after this, pretty much every movie that he's done has some element of choreographed action tied in with the post process, tied in with everything. And you didn't really see a whole lot of that with Shaun of the Dead. You didn't really see a whole of that with Hot Fuzz, but you definitely see it in Scott Pilgrim, and it reverberates all the way down to, again, what I would consider is his best one, and that's Baby Driver.
I think you really nailed that. Fluid was the right word to use to describe Scott Pilgrim, because story problems aside, and I don't know if you guys have read any of the comics that it's based on, but a lot of the issues with Scott Pilgrim and Ramona and the other characters are pretty much straight from the comic. So I feel a little bad like knocking the movie for it, when in terms of being an adaptation, it's actually doing an incredible job of taking the story and putting it on screen. But like even with this movie's very music heavy. There's a lot of it centers around a band. There's a whole battle of the bands going on, and it does an incredible job of matching the song to the right scene, and then matching the editing to the beats of the song or to the emotions it's trying to convey, and going on the right people. And it's all just a very fluid experience, which is, I think, what saves this movie for me from getting too caught up in the characters that I don't like, is how much of a seamless viewing experience it is between the VFX and all the audio and the blocking and the choreography. It just, fluid is the right word.
That bothers me a lot of directors that rely, and I mean, while I'm not dissing him, because I'm not like a diehard Tarantino. I do admire the man. Like Tarantino does this all the time. The directors that rely too much on their their music, like, and not just like, I'm not talking about like score, but just like putting rock and roll songs in your movie. And I remember seeing Zack Snyder's Watchmen, and I can't believe how much I've mentioned him in this episode. It's kind of weird. But like, I'm like, this is just a music video. This is like some of his favorite songs, and he's covering the fact that Watchmen is not something that can be adapted to a movie, and he's hiding that behind like, remember this 70s song? Remember this 70s song? Remember?
That's different, though. I think it's different.
Well, I remember watching Wayne's World 2. It was on like Comedy Central or something. Like back when I was a kid. Well, I say kid, probably like a teenager. And my dad was in the kitchen, like doing the crossword puzzle, like he always does. And my dad just like turning, going, "Are you watching music videos or something?" And I went, "No." And I was like, he's like, "Well, every single like 5 minutes, it just jumps into a song with talking over it." And so I think that he saw that as like, oh, this is just a giant music video that I'm watching. And I felt that there was that to a degree of like, even if you don't completely love the subject material or the characters, like, I love this song, I love that song, I love this song, and like my next great song I love is coming on,
Well, I mean, he had said in interviews that he took a lot of inspiration for the fight scenes, especially, which is kind of, I think, what you're talking about here. Like music in this kind of popped its head around during these fight scenes. He took a lot of inspiration from Bollywood films, which notably everything kind of stops for a musical number. So it's one of those things that in this movie, everything kind of stops for the fight, whatever that is. I wouldn't put him in the same category as Zack Snyder, because there's a very big difference between you throw in a popular song in the background because you like it, and you throw in a popular song in the background that makes sense for the story and is transcending what the meaning of that particular scene is to the audience.
Mhm.
And that's where I'd say the difference is. It doesn't take anything to say like, well, I really like Nine Inch Nails, so I'm going to throw this Nine Inch Nails song in the scene, and it's just there because the character's listening to it, right? Like that's all it is. He's listening to it. What does that tell you about the character? Nothing. Just that he likes Nine Inch Nails. But if you're able to say, well, this song here is not only something that he's listening to, but it's also something that's going to be tied to the edit and tied to the actions of what's going on in the scene. And then on top of that, the song that I've chosen speaks to the character as well as speaks to the audience who's watching this. It's a whole other level than what you get with Zack Snyder.
Well, yeah, but I still think that Edgar Wright has a codependent relationship with his soundtrack.
And that's a style.
Yeah.
But I would never say that he's Zack Snyder. I would never put him. I would never. Not Brian, that I hate Zack Snyder. I'm just saying, like,
I do, but
I know you do.
But I'm doing. Call that apples to pomegranates.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that he is Zack Snyder. I'm saying that like there are tendencies of filmmakers to rely too much on their hyper cool soundtracks, and possibly it could be a distraction, or it could not be. It could be distract them with scenery, so they don't get bogged down into the whole thinking part,
The Wes Anderson approach.
Yes. Oh, thank you for saying that.
And everything being symmetrical and centered.
God.
Don't forget,
you love
everything
that?
looks like an Easter egg or Easter, pink.
Everything has
green.
like the golden ratio applied to everything. It's like, God damn it, stop. So after Scott Pilgrim, we get The World's End.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
and I think we said this before the show came on the air, so I do want to say it now because I don't want to give the juicy bits or leave the audience out of the juicy bits. I think before we started recording, we called this the Return of the Jedi of his
yes, because I don't really care for it.
Yeah.
I don't really care for it.
It's pretty forgettable compared to the other two movies in this trilogy. It's the same problem I have with the Baz Luhrmann's Red Curtain trilogy, where it's two movies I really love and then one that I could completely ignore and it would not change my life even a little bit. The World's End is the one that I could completely ignore in this trilogy, and I don't think my life would be any different or that I would be lacking watching a movie.
And it's a shame though.
Yeah.
Because like you've got maybe you didn't like Scott Pilgrim, John. And you're like, man, I really just wish we can get back to like Simon Pegg and Nick Frost in a movie and a comedy. And this is what you get. And you're like, oh, a bunch of people doing a pub crawl and Nick Frost is the straight person. Like, that's what we're doing. He's the straight guy in this. He's not the comedic guy. Okay. What else? Oh, fucking aliens.
Well, Brian, here's what I think is the problem with this movie is that we want to age, we want to grow, and we want to change, but we don't want our filmmakers to change. And I compared at the very early part of this episode to Edgar Wright, to Kevin Smith, and I see like, Clerks 2 and Clerks 3 and all this stuff. And people are like, this isn't the exact same outrageous, I don't give a fuck about society movie that the first movie was. It's like, yeah, because now he's like 57 years old. Like he changed. Like you want to evolve, but you don't want your directors of it. You want them to make the same movie forever. I think that the audience wanted Shaun of the Dead again, but like it is years later and these people's lives have changed. And I think that Edgar Wright is kind of showing that like, oh no, my wild youth is gone. And but what if there was some part of me, because there is that in everybody where it's like, whatever the excuse is, a homecoming, a big party, a wedding, like, let's get crazy, let's do shots, anybody got coke, where it's like you want to pretend that you're in college.
John, what parties do you go to?
You know what I'm saying? Like you want to pretend you're in college again. You don't want to admit that you're 39 and you got a mortgage and 2 kids and you gotta have to do this side gig every other weekend. You want to believe that you're still that person. And I think this film is that conversation because he as a filmmaker has grown, but I don't think the audience wanted to see, Nick Frost and all the other characters being like, dude, we got jobs in the morning. What the fuck are you talking about? Like doing shots. Like we just want to go to each one of these bars just to appease you and go home. And maybe that's a meta commentary for him as a filmmaker, but the audience just wanted Shaun of the Dead again, and they didn't get it because they don't want him to grow. They just want to grow.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
I still hate the aliens, though.
The aliens are a metaphor, Brian.
No, I think they're just aliens.
I don't even what the aliens. The World's End has left so little of an impression in my mind that even conjuring up what the aliens look like is a struggle.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm in the same boat. I'm like, I don't know even what they look like. I just know that they show up and that it's so jarring. I'm just like, why? Like, I could have been bought into.
Something has to happen, Brian.
Yes,
something has to happen.
Yes, I know something has to happen, but I mean, out of all the things that you could have happen, why does it end up being aliens? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, okay, I get it. You've got this guy who's coming back to town. He wants to do the bar crawl with all of his friends. His friends are way more mature than he is. He's completely immature. His life's been thrown to shit. And he thinks this is like his last chance to like have, a drink with his friends and really complete the bar crawl. Okay, I get that. Great. But what it completely derails any sort of assembly of like what arc these characters have.
Mm-hmm.
The minute that you have these fucking aliens show up, like the whole movie lost me at that point. I'm just like, okay, I don't really care for it.
It didn't lose me at that point because I'd seen the trailers and I knew that was coming. If it had been like if I had seen the trailers for Jurassic Park and then halfway through the movie they went, hey, we solved the whole dinosaur problem, but Dr. Grant, we need to talk about your drinking problem. And that would have been like the last 50 minutes of the movie. I would have been like, that's not fair. You didn't tell me this is going to be an intervention movie. You told me there's going to be dinosaurs and adventure.
Either that or at the end of it, they're like, Dr. Grant, you've got terminal cancer.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, God.
Yeah.
That was what was in the note that the Velociraptor ate. Oh, damn it.
Yeah.
Damn it.
And the cure was carried by Nedry. That's what was covered in the.
Now you've made that movie a tragedy.
Poor Dr. Grant.
I do want to touch on Baby Driver just because, even though I know we talk a lot about it at the beginning, which we got a little out of order, but just, what's everyone's thoughts on this particular film within his filmography?
I just want to start in the sense that I'm only going to take about 10 seconds. I feel like I've already said my piece on this.
You have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I Brian, I think I felt pretty similar to you where like technically I think this is one of his most developed films. I feel like everything is really synergizing together really well from all angles and you get the clearest picture of like what his process must be like from script through to the finished product that goes out to theater and how well it works. Although the story is like not the most interesting to me. I think Shaun of the Dead is probably my favorite of all of his films, hands down, in terms of how much I enjoy watching it just on every merit. But I can't really take anything away from Baby Driver. I think it's a fantastically made film. It scratches a little itch in my audio nerd heart that more so than any of his other movies. And it's solid. I want to say it's probably his peak if we're coming at it from that technical standpoint, but the Shaun of the Dead fan in the back of my brain keeps shouting, no!
You don't need to just give somebody money to show what they are as a filmmaker. Like, I think that most people, I mean, you got your Dawn fans, and there are those that want to be contrary and say, Martin's his best movie. But George Romero fans will say, oh, Night of the Living Dead's his best movie. And he did that movie for like $150 and a bunch of friends doing him favors.
Yeah.
And I mean, not that George Romero ever had like a big budget, but like he never, no matter how much money they threw at him, he never repeated that level of skill. So I don't think that just having a huge budget and very little limitations automatically means like, oh, now it's going to be great,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know for me, barring his inability to write female characters. I mean, that's a very fair thing to say. It's a common trend. I love the technical uses of storytelling in this. I love every bit of, and again, like for you, Sophia, the audio nerd in you goes nuts over this. For me, it's the post production of this thing just drives me nuts. And I love that. Like I was watching it in preparation for this last week when we were going to record. And I was just like, man, every bit of this thing, like it's an editor's dream watching this. And it's just a ballet performance of how you can stylize a movie, tell a story with audio, with color and design, and like even the opening section of this thing. Like, just to give you a little picture of this, okay? If you haven't seen this movie, go watch it because it's really a really solid film. But like when he's going to get coffee, you're seeing the lyrics of the song that he is singing in his head. Like it's actually spray painted on the walls, like as graffiti. Did you notice that? Yeah,
that's production design and writing and sound all coming together and working, and then the cinematography and the blocking also have to work along. It's a perfect little moment where everyone has to be on the exact same page. I feel like you can get that problem really easily in movies where two departments have great visions, but they're not reading the same script, it feels like. And in this movie, it feels like everyone had the exact same script. They all knew what the goal they were working towards was, and they executed it perfectly to best work with everyone who was, next to them at any given moment. And that's just a great example of it.
Yeah. Like, I mean, to be fair, a lot of those things are VFX, and I can tell. But like at the same time, like I love that scene. It's like it's one of these one continuous take ones, which he does a lot in this movie. And it elevates it beyond just a standard, hey, I'm going to get coffee, listen to music. It turns it into something more. And that's what I love about this film.
Well, Brian, could I present an idea of style over substance?
Oh, come on, man.
Well, look, here are two really famous people that wear sunglasses. Jack Nicholson and Tommy Wiseau. But you know what? They're both obnoxious, but you know what? Jack's got the street cred to do it, and Tommy Wiseau is a clown. And I think that this movie is all style over substance. I hate to tell somebody to stay in their lane, but maybe this guy is a comedy director, and maybe he shouldn't try to make these stylized action movies. I mean, there's humor in this movie, sure, but like maybe he's all sugar and no protein. I don't know.
I disagree, John. Disagree. He doesn't know how to write female characters, but he does know how to tell a story.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of not knowing how to write female characters and maybe being all sugar instead of protein.
Transition. Love it.
Let's get to last night and
Sophia, you said you watched this one in preparation. I'm curious to hear your take on it.
Yeah, this was the only one I hadn't seen of his most famous movies. And I do have to, just because when I mentioned offhand to my boyfriend that we were doing this topic for this episode, he said, oh, the director of the Sparks Brothers documentary. And that did come out technically before Last Night in Soho.
Yeah, sorry for skipping that. Yeah.
I haven't seen that one. I'm sure it's fine if you're a Sparks fan. But no.
I wanted to see it and never came to a theater near me.
Oh, no.
But sorry to interrupt. Yeah, but go ahead. Yeah.
But no, Last Night in Soho, I feel like were it not for the existence of World's End, would definitely be my least favorite of his movies. It's just the most clumsily written, female-centered plotline. Every single beat just screamed, "A man wrote this at me." I like, it's got style, but it feels like completely style and the lack of substance. I never really super understood, other than some of the 60s scenes, which have a certain sort of dreamlike flair to them because they're dreams. Nothing felt super motivated. I just really wasn't vibing with this. Good music, but man,
Well,
So-
Sophia, let me explain this to you. See, what you need to understand. No, I couldn't agree with you more wholeheartedly. But here's where I feel that cinema's gone, and I don't mean to be a helpless cynic, but even ignoring the fact of the person who directed it, who I have mixed feelings about, it just looked like a real movie
Mhm.
when I saw the trailers, and that's what excited me about it. I'm like, wait, this isn't a remake, this isn't a reboot, this isn't a requel, this isn't Marvel, this isn't Star Wars, this is like this is like an original idea. It's kind of how I got so excited for Don't Worry Darling, and goddamn was I disappointed.
Yeah, we were disappointed.
I'm like, a real movie? What? An original idea? So
I mean,
that's
as
what
Harry Styles said, it certainly felt like a movie, you know.
And that's what got me excited about this movie. And I was along the ride for about 50% of the movie.
Yeah.
Before, and that's when I was like,
Yeah.
oh no, it's starting to lose me here. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, the ending is what kind of got me.
Yeah, and Hot Fuzz has one of, I think, the best executed kind of twist endings of all time. And then this movie has one of the most clumsy attempts to recreate that same twist effect at the end of, like,
it's very Shyamalan
yeah,
level bad.
very
Very Shyamalan level bad. But yeah,
Anna Taylor-Joy was dead the whole time.
Worse, she was old.
No, she wasn't. She was just old. Oh, and the ghost of the 10th Doctor's coming to get her.
No one wants to bang my cooch anymore.
Oh God.
Drink your tea, you stupid bitch. Yeah.
Drink your tea. Yeah, I saw this one on streaming, and I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
See, I feel that, like, Brian, you and I may have had a different experience watching this, like, in terms of, again, just the first half, like, in a movie theater, like, with the surround sound and the big screen, like, her going to the big club, and you see, like, the James Bond coming soon and Thunderball. It's like, wow. Like, you get distracted by the majesty of filmmaking, and it's not until, either when you get out of the film, or for me, about halfway through, they go, oh, wait, I'm being distracted by flashing lights. This is kind of dumb. I feel like there's a big difference between watching a film like this in the theater or on your phone, And I'm not saying you did, but I'm just saying.
No, I watched this on my TV, but I mean, that's like, I've said this before. It's like when I saw Batman v Superman and came out of the theater, I was like, oh, it wasn't half bad. And then my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, was like, that was bad, right? Like, it wasn't good. and I'm like, well, it's okay. But then a day later, once you start thinking about it more, you're just like, wow, that really was just as bad as I thought, and just as bad as my wife thought. So it's one of those things that I think the sensory overload, and the grandiose nature of movies can kind of skew your perception of whether it's good or bad.
Well, isn't it also a terrible message of this person that was victimized and absolutely tortured and destroyed as a human being? Like, her self-esteem and pride and everything was absolutely disrupted, that she's the villain. Like, how many times do we have to have that trope of victims becoming psychopaths?
Yeah, like,
it's what I hated about Ma. That movie can go straight to hell.
Yeah, it's so unfulfilling and frustrating, because you get to the end of this movie, it's done some attempts to make you sympathetic to the Anya Taylor-Joy character and the what's the actress's name, Thomasin McKenzie.
Thomasin McKenzie.
Yeah. Like, it's done a competent enough job at making you sympathetic to both of them. Like, I was rooting for them both to have their as happy an ending as possible. And obviously, at some point in the movie, we see in Thomasin's, Eloise's dream world ? Where it started to get a little bit of the blurred
Fever
line
dream.
between, fever dreamy.
I call it fever dream.
Yeah. We see Anya Taylor-Joy get murdered. And so you think, oh, she's been murdered. She's dead. We have to deal with her murder in the present somehow. And then the twist that she's been alive this whole time and actually was the murderer feels not like justice for her in the way that solving that crime in the present might have, or catching one of the men who did this to her. It just makes her seem worse, and it only hurts Eloise, the character that we've been coming to sympathize with. And it's so radically unfulfilling and against the messages that the movie's trying to put forward, with like empowerment and solidarity between women, and it just feels gross. Like that was a twist. It happened. I could kind of feel that it was going to happen when they got into that into the house at the end, sat down, and it was too peaceful. I'm like, okay, I'm genre savvy enough. Something twisty is going to happen here. She mentions the police came by, and she's way too calm about that. And the twist just made me feel worse about everything that had come before it, rather than improving the movie in the last couple minutes, like it did in Hot Fuzz, where the twist is this whole peaceful, perfect village is actually run by this cabal of villainous elderly folks. Great, awesome twist. Lets the movie play out to the extremes that it has always been reaching for, and it makes the movie better for it. Here, it just made everything that came before feel worse.
So a big issue I have with this movie, though, is, and this may seem small to other people, but just logic leaps I have a hard time with. The main character in this movie is, for lack of a better term, being haunted by Anna Taylor-Joy's character. You know, and she is in a fashion school, and she has scissors. As with fashion, you need to cut fabric quite a bit, and this other female in the school is kind of like her rival, or just kind of, she's been real bitchy to her, and she's
got to have that at the school. There's got to be that, right? Couldn't just have it.
I'm the best. You're not the best. I'm the best.
Yeah. Like no one's ever seen that before.
But she comes out of the dream, and she goes to stab this girl in the eyeball, and her manic pixie boyfriend stops her arm, like violently stops it before she can put these shears dead in her skull. And there are no charges filed for attempted murder.
No, she just gets to, the mean girl just claps sassily at her at the very end of the scene when she does her successful fashion show.
She tried to kill her.
But we're all cool now. We're all cool now.
I don't know. I don't know if I buy that.
I got so frustrated with how, because this kind of gets to maybe being a bit nitpicky about the logic of the whole thing, but you just mentioned a moment where she was sort of in like one of those fever dreams, and then it got snapped back to reality. She had been pretty deep into actively having these like hallucinations going on for days by the time that we got to that point, and still had been showing up to shifts at work and like all of her classes like normal. And the first couple times I could see it happening, but by the end of the movie, I was like, stop going to your shift at the pub and go home. Like, what are you doing? You could call out of sick for work for having like a stomach bug. You are hallucinating Anya Taylor-Joy in the 60s. I think you can get away.
Well,
Hey, David, why didn't you show up to your shift at Best Buy? Well, I keep envisioning my own death as a child, and my mom's death, when she was younger before she had me. And I just wake up in a cold sweat with piss and bizarrely jizz on my pants. And I need to see a therapist immediately. I probably need to be committed. He's like, well, you better be here Thursday for your 2 to 7 shift. Yeah.
I think that's more of a comment on American capitalism, right there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. In England, you think they'd be like, oh, well, for love of gold, go ahead and get right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have some tea.
Well, I was gonna say, like, one thing that I always thought was funny about this is everything that she's going through pretty much screams to me like tumor in the brain. Like, why wouldn't you go to a doctor at all? Get a CAT scan or something? Like,
this movie reminds me of The Shining in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where like almost not almost, as much as I do enjoy Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. The Shining has nothing to do with it. I mean, I'm sure the people will be like, well, actually, if you dig deeper into the film's meaning, blah, blah, blah. But on the surface, it has nothing to do with The Shining. And I feel like her psychic abilities have almost nothing to do with the movie. I just wonder if Stephen King like got back on coke and showed up and like, hey, Edgar, I got this idea. What, she's psychic? It's like, you mean like all your characters? Yo, what if the movie doesn't take place in England? What if it's in Maine?
Well, that was something that threw me off. Is in the beginning of the film, they set up that her mom went to London and passed away there, likely from some sort of psychotic break, and that she has similar visions of the dead or whatever, kind of very vaguely and very obtusely referred to.
Itis, whatever it is.
Yeah. And then she gets to the city and the visions start to get worse and all this stuff starts happening. And I'm like, it feels like the movie wanted that to be our primer for just rolling with all of the choices she would make regarding what she was seeing and how cool with it she would be. And I don't feel like that was really enough of a justification for everything that followed. It just seemed very thin for... And I hate to request more explanations or more clarity from movies because it's very easy to too explicitly tell your audience things. But this movie could have had like an opening narration or something, and honestly, I would have rolled with it because I was so lost by minute like 20.
Well, what do you guys make of the ending of this film? And I know that we're really focusing on this movie, but that's what happens when it's either the person's first movie or their last movie or their biggest movie. And, so this is his most recent that has hit theaters. Like the whole her looking in the mirror and seeing Anya Taylor-Joy. For me, I see that as like a Force ghost thing, like the end of Return of the Jedi. Do you guys agree or do you have a different interpretation?
I go with, again, why have you not gone to the doctor to get a CAT scan? Because clearly something is wrong where you're still seeing shit in your mirrors. So, but that's, I get why he put that in there. It's kind of like wrapping it up in a nice little pretty bow, but
yeah. I think it was the scene that made the whole twist work even less for me because I think it's very Force ghosty and that like, oh, she's still sort of like connected to Anya Taylor-Joy, but Anya Taylor-Joy just tried to kill her like 5 minutes of screen time prior.
That's not your buddy. Like she's not your buddy.
Maybe kind of like, hey, sorry, bitch. Sorry, I tried to kill you, but I'm at peace now. So peace to you.
Now
thanks.
It was very
thanks,
like,
homie.
It felt like the movie wanted it to be like, look at this like female solidarity. She is carrying on the spirit of this like female leader. I'm like, that's not what's happening here at all. Yeah, it was very girl boss, and this movie needed to be less girl boss, if anything.
But it's an original film.
Yeah, you have to admire that. I even admire that from Neil Breen, not to bring him up again, but at least for the love of fuck, he's making his own movies.
We all know that, John. He says it in every single post the man does on Instagram and Twitter.
It's like coming out in fall 2024, Thor, Piss and Thunder directed by Neil Breen.
I did want to mention that, Edgar Wright did have a touch of Marvel in his
I feel we can't ignore this.
And I think it's a good point to kind of end on how a filmmaker can attempt to try to inject originality into the machine and the machine spitting him out entirely. But yeah, for a moment there, Edgar Wright was the director of the original Ant-Man,
which to me makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
because,
it does.
You're the director of silly but serious. Like you respect the material, but you understand that like funny is okay as long as you're not condescending your audience. So like, an Ant-Man's goofy. So like Edgar Wright's the perfect guy to helmet. But Brian, please tell us on how the studio and him just like shit in each other's Cheerios.
It was, in essence, it was just a matter of, Edgar Wright came at this from his very creative standpoint.
Mhm.
And that's not at all what Marvel wanted. Marvel wanted the product, and Edgar Wright wanted to make a movie. And that's the difference. And that's one of the things, like, we've seen this from Marvel time and time again. They get these filmmakers who maybe have not had a whole lot of experience doing these gigantic films, right? And I think they get them so that because they're easily molded to make the product.
Like, they have talent, but they don't have any clout yet.
Yes.
Get them while they're young.
But the
so
problem
they can
is
groom them.
That's what I'm saying. The problem is that Edgar Wright had the clout. He the guy was fresh off of Scott Pilgrim, so he knew how to work with VFX. He knew how to visually tell a story, and it makes sense for Ant-Man. But the problem is that he's Edgar Wright and he wants to make something unique, and that was the problem. So obviously that ain't gonna work. And that's where, he pretty much got the boot, although he still is on there as one of the writers of the screenplay. So, a lot of the elements that people like about Ant-Man can probably be attributed to Edgar Wright's writing.
Well, a lot of times, though, like, by SAG rules, you have to be, like, credited. Frank Miller was the original screenwriter of RoboCop 2.
Yeah.
But he said that, like, the studio said that his script was unfilmable and they passed it off. And I think they did like 17 rewrites, or I might be exaggerating by that number, but he said that when somebody interviewed him, he said maybe 1% of what I wrote was actually in that movie, but I still got the screenwriting credit. But, I do admire Edgar Wright for being like, I want to make like an independent movie, like not independent in the sense of like not having a budget, but I don't want it to have to like mesh with all of your other products. And that's just not how Marvel works. And say what you want about Joss Whedon. I'm not commenting about him as a person because he's kind of a scumbag, but Age of Ultron like destroyed that man in terms of working with Marvel, because they're like, not only do you need to make this Avengers movie, which is like a weight that is the sequel to the first Avengers, which is a weight that is unfathomable, but you have to also work in our next 37 projects into this movie.
Yeah.
And he went insane. So I understand Edgar Wright being like, no, dude, just let me make an Ant-Man movie. I don't want to tie into any of your other crap. And they
here's what's interesting to note. The script for Ant-Man, the main concept of the whole heist and everything, that is Edgar Wright.
Yeah.
That literally is him.
Okay. Yeah.
So a lot of what's in that movie is very much Edgar Wright's idea. Now, what things weren't in there were things like the quantum realm. The movie also didn't take itself way too seriously either. It was more of a comedy. And I think that the moments that
the movie's pretty much a comedy though, bro.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, like, even more so beyond that, take it for what it will, but like, even though Ant-Man is kind of the comedic MCU movie, there are still moments in it where it's completely serious, like the whole back and forth between what's his face, Yellow Jacket and Ant-Man, where he's like, I'm gonna kill your dad, and that whole thing in the toy room, like that stuff is some serious stuff. So I think ultimately, Wright's script was probably more on the comedic side. Maybe those moments where we do see like the comedic elements in that movie pop out are probably from Wright's script.
Wait a minute, Brian. Wait a minute. Hold up.
What?
Are you inferring that in a Marvel movie, in an origin story, that there is a character that is the polar opposite of the main character, but gets yet a similar suit that is slightly more powerful than the main character, and then gets corrupted by their own power, then uses a big space laser in the sky to challenge this person and their entire Wow, I've never seen that before.
No, you never seen that before.
No.
I guess my point is that original filmmakers, people who want to make original films, don't fit within the MCU model of creating the product. And I keep saying that because that's what it is.
It is a product. Yeah.
The product.
It doesn't mean we can't enjoy it, but
no, I enjoy the product
Disney
very much.
World's
So.
a product. Yeah.
And
Capri Sun's a product doesn't mean you can't enjoy its sweet, delicious flavor.
And I will say, like, Edgar Wright is really good at these like genre films. It's part of why Shaun of the Dead works, is just his understanding of both comedy and then also like what makes a good zombie movie. And that's kind of what makes Hot Fuzz work. It's like, yeah, he understands what makes your kind of action cop, irreverent thrillers work. And I would give so much to see him do a heist kind of in that style. And I don't think Ant-Man ultimately would, there's so much studio interference. I don't think it ever could have turned out to be just like that pure vision. But man, I hope that he goes back to being a bit more genre focused in the future, because if he did a heist and it was good.
Sophia, you got me real excited now. And I want Edgar Wright to stop his droll English comedy. I want him to go as toilet humor as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And here we go, guys. Here's my pitch. Ocean 69.
So like they're all old, like really old.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, and you got your Fairley Brother humor in there. You got your Mel Brooks humor in there. Just every one of his idols growing up. You got your Monty Python humor. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that genre is ripe for adding in a comedic twist, and he could do it justice. I recently watched Logan Lucky for Moviestruck, and that some of it on a bit of a heist kick in general, but yeah, that's what I want him to do. I don't think it's what his next move is going to be, but I would love if it was.
Awesome. Well, this has been fun. So Sophia, before we kind of wrap up, can you tell us a bit about Moviestruck and just how you got into podcasting?
Sure. Moviestruck is a podcast about movies and the people who watch them. It's also a film review podcast of one of the many that are out there. But what we do is every episode I invite on a different guest and ask them to pick any movie they want for us to watch and discuss. The only rule is that it has to be a movie. And so it's my little tiny social experiment about what people will do, and more importantly, what my friends are willing to make me watch if given complete free control. And the answer is literally anything except for like a new release. I've seen everything from the direct-to-DVD Bionicle movies from like the early 2000s to Casablanca and Frankenstein, and then back up to Logan Lucky, Jupiter Ascending, just anything and everything under the sun.
I'm sorry you had to watch Jupiter Ascending.
Oh my god, it's so bad. We can't talk about it because I hate that movie so much. If you want to hear me talk about it, I have 4 hours. But I'm a big movie fan. I love talking about them. I love watching them. I like other people picking them for me so that I don't have to think too hard and endlessly scroll the Netflix lineup and pick something every night. But I'm a podcast producer by trade these days. I got started in this because I got way too into college radio, and for a while I thought I want to work in the radio world. And then I graduated college right into the COVID-19 pandemic, and then no one could find a job for a while. So I thought, okay, I've got to make my own job. And I was working as a freelance video editor at the time, and some of my clients are YouTubers, and I pitched to them a podcast that was sort of an after show, and they loved it. And from there, I've just kind of continued to pitch different shows to people, get brought on as producer to other projects. Now I mostly just will edit any audio handed to me. Sorry, my cat is knocking over everything on my desk. You need to go somewhere else. Down.
I'm keeping this in the podcast, by the way.
Ziggy has made a lot of cameos. She is as frequent a podcast host as I am. Isn't that right? Yeah, now you're quiet.
Like, don't put me on the spot.
Yeah, but I think podcasts are a very fun medium because there's kind of such a low bar to entry. There's not a lot of tech required to really get started, and so it's a great way for someone with a really niche interest to just talk about their interest at length. And I think that that's so cool. When someone's really passionate about something and they have an opportunity to share that passion, I think you get something that's really interesting to listen to, really interesting to engage with. And podcasting is a very accessible form of that. So I like how much variety of stuff I get to work on these days.
Awesome.
Very awesome.
And you have not just one show, but you have 5 shows, right?
I have 3 that I host and a couple others that I either produce or edit or just like periodically do some work for. I would say Moviestruck is probably my like flagship show. That's the one that's kind of my baby. I'm always the host on that one. But I also produce the Overly Sarcastic podcast, which is an after show for the YouTube channel Overly Sarcastic Productions. They do fan Q&A and talk about their latest videos. I go by Indigo on that channel for logistical reasons that are from back in the days of when I was their video editor.
I was gonna say, like, you had shared the episode of Moviestruck that we were on, and I saw that it came from this Twitter account that wasn't your name. It was OSP Indigo Original Bad Boy. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, so Overly Sarcastic Productions does a lot of live streams, and we were talking about this a little bit before the podcast, but on one, I started as a joke saying that my goal on the stream was to become the stream's bad boy, and it's become something of a running bit. So if anyone asks, I am OSP's bad boy.
I believe it.
There's nothing more bad than constantly insisting that you are, in fact, the bad boy. Everyone... That is the baddest move of all. But yeah, but
it's like wearing a shirt with your face on it.
Exactly.
Like, that's the worst.
But yeah, I love those guys. I was their video editor for a while. Now I just work as their podcast producer and occasional extra voice when they need one. But they're really, really wonderful educational content creators. Very, very funny. Been on Moviestruck a couple times. But aside from that, I do also produce and play on a Dungeons and Dragons podcast, as if I wasn't selling my nerd card enough.
Please sell the nerd card.
Yeah, Rolling with Difficulty. It's a D&D 5e actual play podcast where we are doing a Planescape Spelljammer mashup. Basically, we have a spaceship and we're going to all the different planes and planets and whatnot out there. I play I'm going to do the character voice, and I'm going to apologize in advance for it because it sounds like she smoked 3 packs a day. I play Danny, the fiery mechanic of the ship. I do a lot of cursing and a lot of going pew pew with the gun that I got.
I love it.
Yeah, it's great. I have a robot cat in the show. It's a really great group of people. We do.
Danny sounds like she's got some city miles.
Yeah, we've reflavored the city of Brass in D&D to just be the city of Philadelphia, which is my hometown, and that was my decision, and no one has been able to find a way to talk out of it yet. And I think that that's the real power of, improv storytelling. But that show we do usually 2 seasons a year of like 10 episodes each. The next season is coming out in July. There's 3 seasons that exist already, and there are hours and hours of content. So if you have any interest in D&D, I really recommend checking it out. That one is a real blast for me because I basically just show up and then get to play a game with my friends for a couple hours, and then it gets to post, and I'm like, oh no, I have to edit all of this.
I envy those that have video game channels. I'm like, wait, you get to play video games and joke like about them with your friends. I'm like, that's what I've been doing my whole life. I want to be paid for that. Please. Yeah.
I think though, John, if we tried to do that, we would just come off as like posers. I
I feel we need to be in our 20s.
You got to be in your 20s to do that. We're old. We're elder millennials. We that boat, that ship has sailed.
Decrepit millennials. Yeah.
We're just like, what? Watch me play Super Mario Brothers on the NES. That's what let's see that you had no save back then.
You're finding your niche. You're really bringing some spotlights on retro gaming.
There you go.
Well, see, here's what a 20-year-old would. Here's what a 20-year-old would never tolerate. I got to the end of Super Mario Brothers 1. It wasn't, I'd beaten the game prior to this, but if anybody knows the old programming of video games, they used to put like boxes around the characters that you couldn't see, and that was considered the hit box. And I'm right at the end of the game. I'm little Mario. I'm right up to Bowser because he's throwing his hammers, and I'm getting as close as I can, waiting for him to jump, and then he doesn't even touch me. Boom. And I'm like, I'm right at the end of the game. He never even fucking touched me.
Did you throw the controller?
Oh yeah, fuck yeah. I think this is why I'm divorced now, because like poor Lane had to listen to me like yell for 3 hours on how unfair that was. And I was like, just nerds like complaining, like, that's bullcrap. I don't know where it's hitboxing. Yeah. But anywho.
I think you got some issues to work out with him.
I do. I have a lot of issues to work out, Brad. I'm working on them.
As long as you're working on it.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, we have a promise to our audience here who's been listening to this for the full 2 hours.
I hope you remember.
So John, I have a couple of these, but obviously, you might have a couple too. So here's the ones that I got. Sam Raimi fuckboy, and we're talking for those of you who are just like you skip towards the end. We're talking about
those.
So I should preface this. These were catchphrases that John could use off of my coattails in a movie that I make.
Meanwhile,
that will make him $1 million.
This is supposed to be like the next great drama. And I'm gonna say Sam Raimi's fuckboy.
Yeah.
All right.
So one that John had come up with was Sam Raimi's fuckboy. Okay. And then this is one that you didn't officially put down, but you said it at least like 3 times today, and that was apples to pomegranates.
Okay. Yeah.
And I could see that one being one of your catchphrases. Mm-hmm. Like everything is just, well, you know what? That's just like apples to pomegranates, Okay. Well, I'm just saying it's like apples to pomegranates, over and over again. Now, John, you said you wrote down a couple of them, right?
I have a few.
Okay. Tell me what your few are, because I'm going to write these down so that I can post them on Twitter and say which one of these catchphrases will be the one that gets John $1 million.
I have put your strudel on my pool noodle.
That's horrible.
Okay. Like and subscribe to my dick.
Are these all about your dick? Is that what we're doing?
How dare you? I am the poopus. Poop kapoo.
Oh. Yeah. Sophia, what do you think about that one?
Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it. Workshop that one.
Give a banana to my donkey dong.
Again, what is with you?
Dangerously close to Donkey Kong. I feel like you might get some Nintendo IP stuff going on there.
Yeah, they're very litigious.
All right, well, this one's for the thinking man. Doth has sex betwixt her?
I don't know.
Look out, Gambit has pulled his dick out.
I don't know. I don't think so. No.
Give me happy juice.
I don't hate that one.
Yeah, I could see that working.
What about, hey, who fucked the horse?
Okay.
Oh, Dr. Pepper should be disbarred. Or
it depends on the movie. If we're doing like I can see that one being said if the script is like a law drama. And you're like, the drunk in the bar who has the last word in the scene between the two lawyers, like they're like, hanging out, and you just say, Dr. Pepper should be disbarred, and then you throw up.
There you go.
Dun,
yeah.
dun.
Yeah.
This is like if something really goes bad, like an M80 in the pee hole.
Yeah, no.
All right.
I don't think it works.
Your aunt has great mommy milkers.
God. I'm not liking any of these, John.
What about stop washing me, Grandma?
I don't like these. These are not good.
Leave the baby in Lady Footlocker.
What does that even mean?
Fappin' to Lassie.
Ew.
What's that liquid?
That could work. I still think, and you're gonna have to give me a bunch of these. Like, not right now.
Oh no, I'm finishing this. Watch me shave my almond silk on YouTube. I've been meaning to talk to you about your extended colon. Why don't you flush it? The thunder made me squirt. If I take a shot, will you please let my dad live? That burn is from handcuffs. Make sure you listen to our show, whatever podcast that you listen to, and we'll see you next time.
Is that was the one? That's the last one.
Yeah,
That's the last one. I think that might be the winner. I'm gonna take a couple of these. I don't think we need to put all of them. One because I don't think that Twitter will allow you to put like 20.
I believe it's 4. I'll cut you off from previous polls.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
in fairness, I had to think of these while we were recording.
Of course you were.
I would say like circle back around to why don't you flush this, because that's getting pretty close to, I feel like you could use that in a lot of that feels very comebacky, you know, like
why don't you flush this? Or
That's
why
very-
don't you flush this?
Well, it feels very Schwarzenegger, like Running Man-esque.
yeah.
Why don't you flush this? Oh, Brian, you're a goddamn genius. You don't even know it. Pre-production for Edgar Wright. He's remaking Running Man.
Oh, I get executive producer credit on that thing.
Yeah, you should. Yeah. So we'll see what Edgar Wright's Running Man looks like.
Ooh.
But that is what he has in pre-production. So.
There you go. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then, this has been a fun episode. Extra long, but also extra awesome. Usually our episodes don't go to 2 hours, but honestly, this has been worth it. Sophia, thank you for coming on. Tell us where people can listen to Moviestruck and Overly Sarcastic Podcasts, and of course, Rolling with Difficulty. Where can people find them?
Yeah, all of those podcasts are available on all fine audio platforms, your Google Podcasts, your Apple Podcasts, your Spotify's, your et ceteras. Just search the title. It should be the only one that pops up. I've worked very hard on that SEO, so I really hope it is. The Rolling with Difficulty is also available on YouTube by the same name. And all of these are pretty frequently promoted on my Twitter at Sophie_K, K-A-Y _. So if you're ever looking for some links, that's a good place to go. But yeah, just search them up on any audio platform of your choice, and it should be pretty easy to find.
Awesome. Definitely check out Moviestruck. I really enjoyed listening to something.
Maybe
not only our episode, but then just listen to your back catalog is really great. You all really go into
a
lot of the stuff that it sounds a lot like what we do.
Yeah.
Just with less swearing, because we really load that on. John, where can they find you at on the internets?
Mommymilkers.com. No. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. But I do have a video coming out on Dirty Harry, and for those of you who like when I get like cerebral, I have a nice balance in Dirty Harry between all of my poopy fart and boner jokes and actual intellectual discourse. So I try to make a balance. So if I start going a little too cerebral, I throw in a fart sound, so just to liven it up a bit. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. That is coming out in the near future.
Nice. You can find me on Twitter at Brian Connington. I also run the Psycho Show page on there. Be sure to like us and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Psycho Show. You can also reach out and talk to us directly on our Discord channel. We have a Discord channel. The link for it is in the description of this episode. We're also on TikTok for our Gen Z folk and elder millennials like myself at Cinema Psycho Show. Sometimes we post videos up there. Not all the time, but they do get some traction, especially while TikTok hasn't been banned yet. And if you don't want to do any of that, you can always reach us at cinemapsychoshow.com. Drop us an email, talk to us. We'd love to get feedback. And of course, follow us wherever you listen to audio. We will see you next time.
No, Grandma, don't drink that. That's not human milk.
Ow, why don't you flush it?
Yes. Yes.